How I took my client's lips from an absolute disaster to the ultimate dream. Hi, I'm Jessica Marriott, and you definitely want to check out our next video if you want to see how I dealt with this case of an onset vascular occlusion. Hello, this is Jessica Marriott from Second Look Aesthetics. If you want to see how we transformed these lips from this to this, then please continue to watch this video that I've put together for educational purposes. Now, as you can see from the image, this client has a very bad job, okay? Just for context and the purpose of the video, so that you can kind of understand where this client is at. She was a previous client of mine. She'd gone away to have a baby, very normal, and actually decided that because she moved away, that the trip was a little bit far for her, and she actually opted to choose a local injector, which is absolutely fine. Not all clients are always going to be with you forever, particularly if they move away or they are starting a family or anything like this. Now, this client, it's important to understand that I knew this lady before this bad job. So she'd always presented with very lovely definition across the borders of the lips. So the first thing that I want to mention here is that the definition of the lip has definitely been compromised through the injection technique of the practitioner. Now, this is a shocking image, and if any of my clients ever left looking like this, I would be absolutely mortified. And as much as I understand that there are medical contraindication to having lip fillers that can cause additional hematoma, additional complications, this should always be managed, and the treatment plan should be adjusted in accordance with these medical implications, these medical histories, okay? Now, first thing to note, very obvious from anyone watching this who is an experienced injector, we do have heavy bruising in the area. We have heavy hematoma within this zone, particularly here. This is very, very dark. Now, hematomas obviously can happen. Some clients are more prone to hematoma, particularly if they are low on iron, maybe they're on blood thinners, or maybe they have another medical condition that causes them to experience heavier bruising. Now, even if I had a client who had presented these issues medically, I still have never ever experienced a client looking like this when they have left my clinic ever, because this, in my opinion, okay, this is my opinion, this is very, very poor needle control, and this is very poor and lack of understanding of how much fillers should be incremented within certain areas of the lips. So obviously any experienced injectors know that each area of the lip should be placed differently depending on where it is. It might be a more deeper placement, it might be a more superficial placement, but actually this injector, from what I can ascertain just from looking at the photograph, is that she's been very heavy-handed in these areas, and that she's actually injected in increments far too high for the tissue space available within the lip. Bearing in mind, this client has easy lips to work with. We see all of the filler here that is hanging low. Now, all of this filler is completely fallen into the wet border. Now, when you are obviously doing lip injections, which we all know, when you are fanning down and you're fanning into the body of the lip, you never ever want to take these injections anywhere near your wet border, because this is what will happen. It will hang low and it will just look completely awful, and it will leave your client looking almost deformed because the filler is actually hanging and it cannot sit within the correct pocket. Now, top tip here is to keep the fans nice and high. So you want to keep the fans high, okay? Now, whenever I'm performing a lip enhancement, I always ensure that I keep my fans really tight, that they're really close together, and that they're actually really small in incrementation. You don't want to be pushing through per fan more than 0.1, 0.2, absolute maximum in this area, and then seeing how it looks, seeing how the tissue responds, and actually adjusting your technique accordingly. Now, moving on to the next zone of absolute concern, you can see here that these areas are completely white, okay? And look at the difference in colour in these zones that I've marked in black to how her natural pink lip sits. Bearing in mind, this client had no filler injected in the lower lip whatsoever, okay? This is her natural colour, and this is the colour that you would expect to see along the whole surface of the lip. Now, for these areas to be so white, this is so concerning because that would indicate to me that there has been a vascular compromise. Now, any good injector, if they feel like they have a vascular compromise, it can happen to the best of us, even with the most amazing and perfect lip technique injections. The first thing that you want to do is assess whether any surrounding areas of the client where the main facial arteries will run appears to be mottling or not having a sufficient capillary refill time. Now, for me, a good capillary refill time is under 3 seconds, and definitely a capillary refill time that should be improving and not getting worse. Now, this is unfortunately where I think some injectors kind of let everyone down in the industry, because this injector had actually told my client that this was completely normal, sent her home on her merry way, and did not teach her how to do a capillary refill check should she feel that would be the situation. Bearing in mind that this client left looking like this. And obviously sometimes when you have a bad bruise or you have a bad hematoma, it can take, the day or so to come out. This was immediately after she left. Now you can see here, this was the next day. The practitioner refused to let her come back and have a review, saying that she didn't need it and that she was just bruised, and basically that she had to let everything settle down and that would be it. Now, luckily for the client, she had a very good relationship with my team, and I was actually out of the country when this complication happened, which was unfortunate because I obviously would have had her straight in and I would have dissolved this for her instantly, knowing that there was a complication here. Now, she'd reached out to a member of staff, shout out to James, who absolutely handled this situation perfectly. He's an ex-student of mine and now teaches for me. Now, as you can see, so alarming. Honestly, this just gives me the absolute shivers. You can see that her skin here is looking off colour. This skin here does not look how it should, which again would indicate to me that she was having some kind of compromise. And any good practitioner, injector should be watching out for any main facial arteries to see whether there's any compression or any lack of blood supply within that zone. Now, you can see hematomas are getting worse. That's normal for a hematoma, even though to me these hematomas are shocking. They will get darker before they get better, and that is a good thing because it means that there's blood flow to the area. But you can still see that the areas that were white in the previous photo are actually getting whiter and more concerning. Now, there's, again, I always can tell when there's a bad job. There's no fillers here at all. There's no fillers here. And all of the fillers here have been placed far too low into the wet-dry border. So these are all in the wet border and they're just hanging low and look absolutely awful. Now, this is a result of when you're making your fans coming too low into the dry border. And then if you're injecting in very high increments, this will obviously drop into areas that you don't want it. So top tip here is to keep your fans nice and tight, nice and precise, and make sure that you're not going too low into this wet zone here. Otherwise you will see a hanging and the client will almost have two balls here, which will just look completely awful and not aesthetic at all. And that will heal in a very unnatural way because the lip should be flat, and actually they're going to see two protruding balls underneath either side of the top lip, which of course does not look good whatsoever. So this lady, she did end up having a dissolve with the practitioner that caused this complication in the first place. We did have to have a very thorough chat with her to ensure that she knew how to correctly dissolve, and she did seem a little bit out of her depth, which was very sad that she felt she was able to perform this treatment for my client because she was none the wiser and completely trusted the injector to do a nice job. Now, this was the second day in the evening. This is just gives me absolute goosebumps because this is scary to me, like, wow. I'm just going to zoom a little bit for the purpose of the video. So you can see here that these areas have turned completely white. There is absolutely zero blood flow to these areas. So we're now looking at no blood flow. Symptoms that she felt was coldness, pain, and a slow refill when she was performing her capillary check. Now, it's important to note and to mention here that not all clients will have the same capillary refill time. And in my opinion, anything over 3 seconds is classed as a low capillary refill time. So if you look here in the body of her lips, how lovely and pink her lips are, and the difference between this zone and this zone is absolutely shocking. This just makes me feel really sorry for this girl. She's completely lost the border of her lip. It's just all kind of going into one with the skin. I can't actually see the skin compromise here because the photo wasn't mine. It was from the other practitioner. And obviously, as we know, she wasn't thorough in making sure that she was without makeup to see whether any main facial arteries had been compromised, which was a shame. But yes, she did go back nonetheless, saying that she was cold here. There was no blood flow. The practitioner still stood by the fact that there was no compromise. It's just shocking. This is still happening. All the literature we have, all of the training, all of the access to learning resources, materials, free online masterclasses, and this is still happening. So yeah, very, very sad. As you can still very low here, hanging absolutely too much filler in all of these areas. It's awful. Now, because I was out of the country when this happened, she did go back to the original practitioner and she did have her dissolve her lips. She dissolved the lips, they went back to normal, and actually this was my client on the refill. So as you can see, a completely different situation, and it almost looks like a completely different set of lips where you would think, actually, is the other image even real? Because it looks that bad. I'm just going to go back and show you the before, if I'm able to. Am I able to? Yeah. So again, this is how she was looking beforehand. We identified the areas that weren't so optimum, the lack of definition, the incorrect placement of fans, the difference in the pink lip compared to the other photographs. And yeah, this is where I managed to get her lips to in just a single session. Now, as you can see, the tips of the Cupid's bow are completely back. They look absolutely lovely. They are quite high in this photograph, and that will just subside with any swelling that she has. But as you can see, lovely definition. Look how defined the edges of her lips are now. This is just absolutely what you want to be seeing. It's like all of her colour and shape came back. There is no makeup on this photograph. This was just her skin as it was on the other photographs, with more precise injections. As you can see, fan started from the top, went low, not into the wet lip at all, nice and tight, controlled fans, no more than 0.1 to 0.2 per injection. And look how straight she is here compared to the other photo. In the other photo, she had like almost 2 hanging balls of filler. This is completely straight, and this is because the wet lip has not been compromised at all. This is so lovely. I love it when clients leave with this absolute perfection in the lips. So yeah, fans here, gone down, not too far. You don't, or stay higher if you're not sure. Always stay higher and make sure that your fans are really precise, close together, and that you're not going anywhere near this wet lip. Again, for the other side, nice and close, really controlled fanning. And then I would do a second fan around this area for the client. I'm just going to remove that marking because it's too close to the border. Never inject your second fans too close to the border because this is where you can get migration. So again, a second fan, and then yeah, that's it. You can see that I did also place some fillers at the bottom lip, just fanned her out really nicely just to kind of create a nice combination look. I didn't want to do the top lip and then the bottom lip kind of looked out of place. I just wanted to really nicely balance that out and make sure that she had overall definition, that everything was really nice and even for her, that everything was looking how I'd envisioned it in my head before we began treatment plan, and that everything was actually how she aesthetically would have liked it in the first place. Now, in the bottom lip, we just did some fanning here, a little bit of body work just with a linear thread and aspiration, and really that was it. So she left super happy and she was absolutely fine. But do not get me wrong, this client was traumatized from the bad job that she'd had. Please make sure that you're checking your practitioner, who it is that's injecting your lips, and that they have experience injecting lips and they know the proper placement and increments in which fillers should be, depending on your lip style and your lip shape. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more facial annotations, do let us know and we'll be happy to record more videos.